Alright YouTube, this is a video, just basic video on dry washing, and I'm going to show you some things on a dry washer. This is mine. This was built by a friend of mine years ago. Joe Johnson was his name, and if you look close here, it says on the end here, Weekend Gold. That was the name of his company. He built quite a few of these. This is number 2. It's the second one he ever built, and we're still using it, and that's been probably 18 years ago. So if you look close here, it has a bail down here at the bottom, and this bail is hooked to a spring, and what that does, it takes and puts more vibration into the dry washer itself. You can see it bounces because of that spring. My other dry washer doesn't have the spring. I've decided against that type of thing. The other one is the tray here. If you look, is hooked down here at the bottom, and the tray is removable along with the riffles. Some of the newer ones don't do that. It's just a different way of doing it. It's not a big deal. And typically of dry washers, it's an X-frame here that when it folds up, it's just flat. 2 bungees go around it, and then you can pick up and go with it. Doesn't weigh hardly anything. On the back, it's supported by these S-hooks down here at the bottom. It holds the grizzly. This being the grizzly, and it's 1/2-inch flat expanded metal, which is a really good setup. Down on the bottom here, this is a center air feed, being that's where the hose from the motor goes in. It's right on the bottom. I get a lot of glare off the sun right here. It's just coming up. And then it will tie in to the motor. And this is a tip. If you look at my hose and the end of my blower, which is an Echo, it's the best blower you can have, is the Echo. I've had them all. I've had Poulin, I've had Homelight, I've had Ryobi, I've had everything. This is the best, lasts the longest. This one is about 8 years old. But the fittings are a thing. It's 3-inch sewer hose fittings, and that is on the motor and on the hose. So all you do is pick it up and hook it to the motor, just 1/4 twist. There's no tools, there's no clamps to deal with or anything, and it's ready to go. Okay, we're hooked up now. I couldn't hold the camera and twist that on at the same time. I guess I'm just not coordinated, but there that is. So anyhow, a little couple tips on these dry washers. On the bottom of the, I don't know if you can see it here. On the bottom of the grizzly here, there's a slide. And it's under here. I don't know if you can see my fingers underneath there or not, but this slide, I typically leave it wide open. Unless I get into some heavier materials and I need to slow down the flow. And another thing that we do that a lot of people don't, I don't believe in screening with a 1/2-inch mesh screen on a bucket, hauling the bucket over, then throwing the dirt on this 1/2-inch screen on here. We shovel right into the dry washer, and we find really good gold almost all the time. So that's another tip that I think you ought to look into, is to shovel onto the grizzly. Another thing is, if you look right here at the box where the riffle rack is, the riffle rack should be pretty close to level. And what you want your dirt to do is to fall on this slick plate right here. There's a slick plate, and here's your opening and below the grizzly. So that material falls there and doesn't hit on your cloth and tear your cloth. But this angle here is really important, and what you don't want it to do, if you're too slow, it'll build up on the slick plate too much. And there's a fine line between too slow and too fast. I see guys running these at a 45-degree angle, and you're just pouring gold out on the ground. So That's another really good tip, to keep it as flat as you can and still keep the material moving down over the riffles. And that will this help you catch much more gold. So this is another tool that kind of goes along with a dry washer. It's a vac pack bucket. Now this is a really expensive setup if you go out and buy it. But you can get a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, and you can buy this little fitting. Oops, it went too far, sorry. Right there, that's in the bucket. It goes in with 2 screws on the inside. You can get them for like $4.95. And cut the hole in the bucket and make one yourself. And that's all there is to this. It isn't, computer science or anything. It's just a bucket with a hole in it. And what you do is, for those of you who don't have it or don't use it, this is the hose. Let me back out here a little bit on this. And the hose just merely goes in the bucket, not like so. The motor comes loose from the dry washer. See if I can do this one-handed. And then the motor merely locks onto the top of the 5-gallon bucket. So now you got a vac pack. You use the same motor you use for your dry washer, and now you got a vac. You vac with this end, obviously. The motor puts a vacuum on the bucket, and it puts it on the hose. I believe that's a 2-inch hose. And you can vacuum out the bottom of your holes and find much more gold. So that's it for just this basic how-to. I'm going to do another video of us running, and probably another one with
What you're
some
seeing
other
now
content.
is Cheryl, my wife, and she's working in a rivulet that we picked to work at Morristown area off some Roadrunner prospectors claims. It's really steep right here, and you can see how flat the dry washer is. And what she's doing, she's running quite a bit of material here to keep that tray flat on the bottom. This rivulet I just showed coming up the hill. A rivulet is just a real narrow washout area, but it washes it out and gets you right to where the gold should be. Had trouble with the motor, so as you can see, we dug a flat on the side of the hill to set that motor. That's something we've learned to do rather than getting the dust in the motor and the motor keep falling over. So you just dig a flat on the side of the hill, and that's where it'll sit for you. As you can see, when she's working this material, she works it first up the grizzly, then back down. And I guess I did a close-up of the motor here to show you that flat spot for the motor. And it's real rocky here too. It's was a little bit of a hard place to work, but it ended up being pretty good. The color was pretty good, and the work wasn't too awful bad. Well, here you can see this up the rivulet a little ways where it's washed out and coming towards us, and we're going to work that area out also. Cheryl's just, I can just barely see the shovel here where she's scraping this material down, and we're going to end up vacuuming this so we get every little piece of it. And here you can see where we've been working. Nice material. It was really packed, hard packed material. And there you can see a little bit of the red iron staining in the ground, which is always a good sign. We don't pre-screen our stuff. We run right into the machine, watching for nuggets all the time because Morristown area is noted for nuggets. We run our grizzly fairly flat like this, so if you're by yourself, you have to rake the gravel off, but the material stays there. You can work it through the grizzly if there's clods. So it's in an area like this, it works really, really well. She's holding down the leg on the dry washer frame. It wants to tip forward on her here. We just don't have enough material down on that foot yet, so she'll just keep working at and getting that down there. And that doesn't hurt, when you're working the material on top of the grizzly either. Just keep a foot on it. It's not going to hurt anything other than maybe your foot if you have a big rock in it. And that wasn't a nugget she just showed you. That was just a rock. So there's where she's covering the foot with her tailings. Just scrape it up. I mean, it's there. You've already run it, so you might as well cover over that foot so it doesn't tip on you. And again, see how she's working the dirt up the grizzly. That way that lets most of the fines fall through and you can see what you're working with there. As that glove goes up and pushes that dirt, it actually knocks some of the dust and dirt off it, so if there happens to be a nice nugget there, you'll be able to see it easier, because a lot of times the dirt is stuck on the gold and you can't see it. Well, this is our setup for vacuuming. We use the same blower that we use for the dry washer, and I've got a lid that's screwed to the blower and it sits right on the bucket and works really good. So that way I only have one piece of equipment to deal with. I don't have to have a separate vac motor and a separate dry washer motor. And we've got this extension that concentrates the vacuum on it. It works pretty well and gets you better into the cracks. You can see this caliche. It's just really, really hard white caliche here. Material takes either a pick or a bent screwdriver that we showed how to make in another video to break this apart a little bit, to get in between all those little cracks. Makes it much easier for the vac to work and to pull that material. And it'll get that just perfectly clean using that vac in that manner. And now she's pulled the nozzle off there to pull a little bit bigger material, just trying to move a lot more material. And doing it like this with the hose, you don't plug that little nozzle that goes on the end of it. Your suction's down a little bit, and I think you'll see here what she does. She's chipping in between all these clods and vacs up for a little bit. Then you'll see her lift the hose, and that just pushes that dirt manually back into your vac bucket, like right there. This sucks it up, and it'll try to hang up in the hose because it's heavy. And these vacs aren't super powerful like a street vac when they do the potholes in a street. But there's enough there to pull that material off the caliche, and then when she lifts the hose up, it gets sucked right into the bucket. And at times there'll be roots come across the area you're working, and just pull the root up with a pick and vacuum underneath it. The gold will stick anywhere. And this little rivulet she's working in here was only probably 18 inches wide when we started. So we've gone up on the sides of it, and it didn't work real long on this. I can't remember if it was a half a day or something, maybe. Just really easy work. And that's the way to get all the gold out of this caliche, just what she's doing. Scrape it a little bit, vacuum a little bit, keep scraping and vacuuming. And anything that was stuck in there, we're pulling it out. You can see the red tinge to this material also. It's got a little bit of iron in it. quickly. She got pretty clean down there. And this is some of the places we're heading to get this rock out of here. Now she's just dumping her vac material into the dry washer. That's what makes it nice just using the wand. You just pull the motor off the vac bucket, hook it back up to the dry washer, and then just pour it in. Let her run. And look how flat we're running here. That's another big thing. Most people run their dry washer way too steep. When you run it steep, you have a tendency to run the gold off the end of it if you run it steep. If you're catching the little gold and there's big gold, you're going to catch the big gold if you catch the little stuff. And the flatter you can run it, the better off you are. Unless you're getting a huge buildup at the upper end, and obviously you can see here she's not, but that little slick plate where your material drops, if you can just let it build up for a little bit for a second as the machine's shaking and work down. And we run into a damp spot here, which she's doing. We do this a lot. If it gets a little damp, we'll set a gold pan down there, run the material into it, and as it fills up there, we have another one, and we dump it and run it through. So you just keep recycling to dry your dirt off so you don't lose any gold. We've been doing that for years. We can either do it that way or we'll let it run off into a shovel and just shovel it back through. And that really helps when your dirt is damp like it's been this year. It's actually been wet. But you can still run it. There's just those tricks to doing it. Just rerunning it with a gold pan or a shovel, or some people use a tarp. I don't like to do that. It takes too long to lay it out in the sun and let it dry. But this way it's faster, and your recovery is actually really pretty good. This, I believe, is the bottom of the hole, or the edge of the wash. I think we had a centipede running around down here. Is what this was. We had to shovel up a big old centipede from underneath the rocks, and he was running around down there by our feet. I don't know about you, but I can't seem to find him now. I don't see where he went. You have to take my word for it. He was there, but he's not now. I don't know where he went. And we're about down here. This is a little 11-inch pan. It's an 1849 gold pan. I got that from Joby years ago, and we have these 11-inch pans. We have 3 or 4 of them, and we just use them. We like them better in the desert because of the lack of water, and you don't get as much concentrate as you do with the dredge. So this is what we use, and this is obviously it has nice ripples in it, by the way. They're not too bad. And this is what we got there. We recovered some really nice gold.